We got Gators breakdown here. We know we're business.
Gators breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
Oh, Will, does it have to be true? There's never a dull moment in Gator Nation. I mean, here we go again. Here we go again. You know, we hit on it a little bit yesterday with the Gators Breakdown Plus chat, but fall camp starting, and here we are. David Waters right here on Gators Breakdown. I'm the host, and joining me, Will Miles, at Will Miles SEC from Read and Reaction. Fall camp. Players reporting today. Everybody getting together. First practice is tomorrow on Wednesday. Great time for me and Will to get together. We heard from Billy Napier. We heard from Russ Callaway. We heard from Ron Roberts. Some players spoke as well. Some other coaches as well. That's the three we'll concentrate on, but absolutely the big headline is getting the update from the coaching staff, from Billy Napier, on the status of DJ Lagway heading into fall camp. So, like I said, hit. You guys got a lot of my thoughts on that with the Gators Breakdown Plus chat yesterday, but certainly knew we were doing an episode here on Tuesday with the Gator media availability. So, Will, lots to get to. Big news, but good seeing you again, man.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I wish I had better news for the folks out there. Obviously, anytime your star player is injured, that's a big deal. And I mean, look, in our preseason magazine, it's 70 pages of Gator material. I would say 35 of it is DJ Lagway. So we went all in on the Lagway angle. I think Gator fans have gone all in on Lagway as the savior. And certainly after the last few games last year, that's where I think a lot of us sit. And it was kind of a miracle that he played anyway after the hamstring injury last year. And now you've got another soft tissue injury. And we went through this with a previous, a talented player previously with Anthony Richardson, where he had hamstring issues that kept him off the field from time to time as well. So, the soft tissue injuries tend to be things that recur, tend to be things that linger. And obviously, calf injuries have been in the news recently during the NBA playoffs. And so, that's something you don't necessarily want to mess around with, considering, the kind of torque that's going to be put on different joints and muscles during the season. So hopefully Lagway's able to – this is early enough in camp. We're still more than a month away from the first game. The first couple of games, even if you had to have him sit out, you could do that. But you know what? September 13th, I need him, man. I need him against Nussmeier. I need that to be the that matchup's coming up. It's not too far away. We're only like 6 or 7 weeks out. And so, rest easy, DJ. Rest easy, man.
I mean, don't get me wrong. It's better than the alternative, but I don't know if I want him taking his first snaps of the season on the road in Death Valley.
Hell, he took his first snaps of the season last year, or first real snaps in the second half against Tennessee. So, I think Lagway has an ability that we've all recognized. I think for the most part, reading defenses and understanding what to do after the snap, especially if the safeties change the alignment after the snap, is the type of stuff that we've been working on. Like, he's not going to need the idea that he's going to need like an immense amount of reps. I mean, certainly you want to build some rapport with your receivers on like comeback routes and things like that. But, it's not like he got a ton of reps with Elijah Badger and Shamir DK last year and was still able to light it up with those guys. So, are there going to be some hiccups along the way if he doesn't get reps? Sure. I think that's probably the case. But the reality is I would rather have 100% healthy DJ Lagway against LSU than a compromised DJ Lagway at any point throughout the season, because, I mean, we've even talked about this repeatedly. We have a page dedicated to Harrison Bailey in the preseason magazine where it's just like, breaking case of glass. But, that's the reality, is sometimes you're going to need somebody to step up into that spot. And Florida may need a guy sooner rather than later, depending upon, how severe is the strain?
Right.
Like, a guy like Halliburton in the NBA playoffs was continuing to play every other day.
Here's other word too. I don't mean to disrupt you, but since you're going there, also maybe some word is contusion. So maybe not as severe as a strain when it all is said and done, but it's kind of secretive. We'll hear from Billy Napier on DJ Lagway, but just keep that in mind too. If it is a strain, I'm 100% with you, but maybe contusion, heavy duty bruise, but we'll see.
Well, he's in a boot, so that's probably not the best.
Very precautionary. Hopefully,
I was gonna say, can he play in a boot? Like, just put him out there with a boot on one leg and let him run around. But now, look, I think some of the things that we thought he was going to do early on in the year was that fully healthy, a I've said this multiple times is, wow, won't it be nice to see Lagway on 2 good legs? And, that'll be the question is this something that lingers throughout the season, or is it just something, like you said, is it a bruise that they're taking significant precautions to make sure that by the time the Sharks come to town that they're ready to go? My guess is probably more of that, but whenever you hear calf strain, I mean, Kevin Durant 2 years ago in the playoffs with the Warriors, he comes back from a calf strain, immediately tears the Achilles. You had the calf strain for Halliburton in the NBA Finals. That's probably the most high-profile one. Certainly in the NBA, calf strains have tended to go towards more serious injuries when they're not taken seriously. So I think, the boot and all that stuff is probably a good sign that Florida and Florida's medical staff is taking the injury seriously to a place where when they put Lagway out on the field, he's not at risk of hurting himself any further, and anything that does happen will be because of a play on the field rather than rather than a perpetuation.
Yep. Hopefully your audio gets better there. It went kind of muffled there for a second, but we'll see. We'll see. It sounded like when we came on before. So.
I'll move my mic so that I have better audio. Sorry, folks.
There you go. Loud and clear again. Loud and clear again. Hey, Will's loud and clear. Everybody hit that like button. That's what we like right here, being able to hear Will right there. And comment, guys, right here. I know some live comments going on right now. If you're watching the replay, do the same thing. Subscribe right here on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. But plenty to get into right here with fall camp starting. So let's go ahead and hear from Billy Napier, and we'll go ahead and start with the headline. Instead of zooming out, we will zoom out after this. But the big headline, of course, is DJ Lagway and his availability. So here's what Billy Napier had to say on DJ Lagway.
DJ, what's the concern level for him, and how much do you think he's going to be able to do in these?
Yeah, I think he'll be, again, he's day-to-day. The good thing is that I think we're about a week removed, so in general, he's made a lot of quick progress, but it will be something that we're monitoring, and hopefully as we go, his ability to participate in practice will be a little bit more each opportunity that we get going forward.
DJ, in terms of, I know it's a minor thing, a minor setback, but this is a guy who wants to be healthy and wants to be out there for every snap, and he just keeps getting these little minor setbacks. Yeah, no,
I think, look, injuries are one of the tougher things about the profession, and certainly for him, being a year 2 player, and a really motivated and hungry guy, so I think he's done a good job staying connected. I think he still has a voice as a leader. He's still walking the halls. He's still able to be a factor in that regard. But, he's still a very young player and needs these reps for development as well. So, when he gets back, he'll be just fine. But, he's had a great attitude towards it, and I think we got to help him manage expectations a little bit as well. So, but in general, I think one day at a time, being present and executing the plan for each day. I think we got to help him with that.
One more DJ question. Obviously, he was very limited in what he could do in the spring, limited to start camp. How concerned are you about this affecting his development, considering how important that is at the position at his age?
Yeah, it's not ideal. In the perfect world, he would have been perfect every day of the offseason, right? So I think the good thing is his attitude towards it. I think that's a positive. And I think Coach O'Hara has done a good job of being creative. This room in particular, we've used quite a bit, going all the way back to when he first arrived. And then, just ways to keep him connected, keep him processing. We do a ton of things in our off-season program, and certainly OTAs this summer. He was able to take 1 million reps. We do some of that without a ball, some with the ball. So, look, he's in year 2. He I think, understands what's required to be ready. It's not ideal, but I think ultimately, we'll come up with the best plan we can to have him ready.
There we go, Will. Hearing from Billy Napier and all that does with DJ Lagway. I mean, the first thing was about a week removed, so that goes kind of confirm. If Billy Napier is forthcoming and telling the truth with the information there. It happened last Tuesday. That's initially what I heard last Thursday when I first heard something. I mean, I texted you. I think it was Friday or over the weekend, and we're like, okay, this. I don't know when this is going to come out, but this is what we're dealing with here. And you and I both. I think somebody I was talking with before, and then you responded with the same gift that I did to that person, was the little kid from Little Giants, just all padded up and walking to practice or whatever. And that was the feeling there. And then so about a week removed from it. Tuesday to Tuesday right now. So hopefully rest and relaxation as much as he can. And I think good to point out there for Billy Napier too in the OTAs that DJ Lagway took 1 million reps in the OTAs. It's not like he hasn't thrown since the bowl game last year. Now we know he was very limited in spring. Then the OTAs come, and we had already heard he started throwing. I think it was late May. So it has been somewhat trying to build a rapport, I would assume, with the wide receivers. And that's probably the biggest thing for me. We talk about reps. You heard what Billy Napier had to say, and yes, it's not ideal. That's probably the less ideal part of it for me, Will, is the receivers. There's a lot of new faces in that receiver room. And, Trey Wilson missing last year as well. Didn't get to play a whole lot with DJ Lagway. J. Michael Certovic comes in. You're missing Chimere DK. You're missing Elijah Badger. So you'd like to have that rapport. But going to your point that you made a while ago, it's not like he was getting all the first-team reps with DK and Badger a year ago when Graham Mertz was the quarterback going into the season opener against Miami, and then he goes down and DJ Lagway has to step in. So, yeah, I mean, he's already dealt with some unique situations for a young quarterback, all the way back to his very first game. And let's not forget, going into that very first game against Miami last year, it was kind of revealed that he was dealing with the first time we had heard he was dealing with a shoulder injury going into that Miami game. And then there he is, and getting his lumps and taking his lumps in his very first game action. And then we saw him build off of that as the season progressed. So it is a quarterback that, and then let's not forget the injury too, and then having to come back. It is a quarterback, DJ Lagway, and kind of going to the things Billy Napier just said, who's had to deal with a lot. And they've put a lot on his plate so far. Things have just happened to be on his plate so far, and he's handled it pretty well. Yeah,
I mean, look, this wouldn't be a big deal if Florida had a proven backup, or if Graham Mertz, say, were still in the fold. This wouldn't be near as big a deal. But this is Lagway's team. It's Lagway's season, and quite honestly, it's Napier's opportunity to prove it. He spent all week during SEC Media Days talking about spot the ball. We don't care about what happens. Spot the ball. We got a tough schedule. Spot the ball. Turns out, quarterback's injured. Spot the ball, right? Like, there's not going to be any excuses this year, irrespective of whether Lagway plays or doesn't play or any of that. So, I mean, I sent you the gif of the kid in the bubble wrap because you need him healthy when it's time to play at LSU. You need him healthy when it's time to play at Texas A&M. You need him healthy when it's time to play in Jacksonville, or when you're playing or I guess they're playing Florida State at home this year. But you need him for those games. When you go to Oxford and you're playing Mississippi, you need him for those games. If he misses a few throws right now, who cares if that means that he's healthy moving forward? The concern is that this is sort of a theme at this point, right? You go coming out of the offseason, you're going into the Miami game already injured. Then you get injured in the Georgia game and have to play injured throughout the entire rest of the season. Then you go into the offseason and you're injured. Now, is that a continuation of what happened earlier? Probably, but and now you're going into fall camp and you're injured. So that's sort of been the story thus far. Now, is there a history of that at the high school level? Not really, I don't think. And so, is it just sort of a freak accident where, the kid was pushing a little bit too hard, felt something and said, hey, let's take it easy. Hopefully that's the case. But, look, I mean, people aren't going to – I doubt that the staff is going to be that forthcoming about a Lagway injury. The reality is, though, with him walking around campus with a boot on, the news was going to get out. So it's more – and the fact that he wasn't out there at, open sessions and things like that that news is going to get out. So they have to divulge something. And then it's just a question of what grade strain is it? Is it a bruise versus a strain? What is the real diagnosis? And, we'll figure out as the season moves along because they were always going to run him a little bit.
Yeah.
At least you figured they would in certain circumstances. And if they come out, and especially in the game against LSU, and he's just strictly a pocket passer, you're like, all right, they're still probably protecting him a little bit. Because even early last year, they ran him on some end arounds where he got drilled and some other stuff. I think they probably dial some of that stuff back this year, but the reality is you can't play scared. And so I think Florida was going to run him a little bit at least this year. And, we'll see whether that gets dialed back as they go, because that is a weapon that will open things up, especially if there's some chemistry that needs to be built for receivers as it goes.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, I think the audio thing is just like the longer you talk, then it finally just goes out for some reason. See, you stop there and then now it gets clear again. So I don't know.
Well, so you're just telling me I need to shut up, Dave. I got it. Message received.
I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was. It's like it gets muffled for like the last 10 seconds or something. I don't know. We'll see. But I don't know if it goes out that way. It may not even go out that way. So who knows? So Russ Callaway, we'll hear from him. I try to follow the rules Florida sends to us, official media members, and limit to 3 minutes per interview. So we'll hear from Russ Callaway, but there was a question asked from him that I'll read the answer to. He said, other than staying healthy, what are the kind of next real steps you want to see from DJ Lagway? And Russ Callaway said, I think obviously he was different because he was thrust into that role so quickly. And that was, to answer your question from earlier, that was probably a moment where all right, this kid's 18 years old. Is this going to be too big for him? And it wasn't. And that first walkthrough that he had out there the Friday before we played, I guess it was Samford, it was like a kid's on another level from a mental work ethic standpoint. He was flawless through that walkthrough. So, along with him continuing to do that and develop, he's a natural deep ball passer. He's obviously a good runner. He's good at intermediates, good at the quicks. The thing I think we would like to see another step on, and he is doing that, is just continue to be able to roll with the punches. And kind of going to the point that I just made there. It says, not from a scheme standpoint, week in, week out, how it changes, but the ups and downs. And he's done that. He has that in him. It's just when people start wearing on you and the media and everything, kind of like comes at you, it's like, all right, how do I handle this? He's done a phenomenal job of handling everything good and bad, and I think he's going to continue to get better and in that role. Another question that was there, he goes, how does his passing ability change what you can do in the throws that he can make? He goes, yeah, great question. Obviously his passing ability, but he's such a big human that he's hard to tackle. So certain things you would maybe be a little hesitant to call with him. It's like he's liable to throw that defender off, make a miss, and then throw it. There's just like you won't get the plan for that, obviously, but you feel a little bit more at ease calling it because some of the things that he can do is going to make you right. But obviously his deep ball accuracy is really good, and he's gotten better at everything. He's been good at all of it, but it's not saying where you're at. You're either getting better or you're getting worse, and he's gotten better at everything. So, yeah, I would say that's probably the most unique thing. And then the last little string of questions is, and I was even asked this morning on Bill King's show, is he too big, by the way? So, and I've heard that people say, he might be too big for a quarterback, and maybe that's where these injuries are coming from. Well, Russ Callaway said, I don't know if you could ever be too big, as long as you can move. So, no, he's not. I think he's about what you want. If you were to draw one up, I think he would be the one you draw up. The biggest thing here is that injuries keep adding up and keeping him limited and not being a full go. Obviously, the question is, how much does it hurt his progression? Mental reps only go so far. That's my part there. These things keep adding up. And you heard the steps that Russ Callaway was talking about he needs to take. And obviously, from Callaway's mouth, and probably expect that publicly, that's what you expect to hear. He's doing those things. And obviously, I think that's what we're looking for DJ Lagway anyway. I think it probably is no shock that we are hearing that he's doing those things, but we know he's been limited all the way to the back at spring, only throwing 2 OTAs, and that's where we're at right now. So I think obviously the question is, how much does all this hurt his progression? Well, mental reps, they only go so far. He needed those too, but he also needs to apply those physical reps. So I'm not too concerned with the timeline yet, but it can't linger but much longer. I know, like you said, as long as he's 100% versus LSU, that's where you want him. I agree, but I think in an ideal world, he is taking real game snaps against LIU in USF as long as he's ready for it. I don't think this staff's going to rush him back. I know there was that question last year when he got hurt versus Georgia and he doesn't play versus Texas and he's sitting there playing versus LSU that 2 weeks after the injury, or are they rushing him back? Well, everything turned out A-okay there. So I think they're going to do what they need to do to make sure DJ Lagway's okay. But this is something you can't let linger. But ideally, I hope he's out there game 1, game 2, not a whole lot. Anyway, I don't think if he's 100%, he ain't playing a whole lot versus LIU anyway, and hopefully not versus USF anyway either. But I do hope there are some game reps before LSU.
Well, yeah, I mean, Napier even said it. Like, this isn't ideal, but it's the hand they've been dealt, right? So, so that's realistically, you take a new data point every day and figure out where he is in his progression. And getting reps in practice doesn't necessarily mean going 100%, which also means you can limit what he can do in practice while still maintaining the health of the muscle that you're trying to protect. And so there's some things you can probably do there as well. But I mean, I guess I look at it and I just go, the kid is incredibly physically gifted. And the mental reps are really the thing that I think held him back some last year. It was when the defense goes into drop 8, I don't know what to do right away. It was my footwork gets a little bit out of sorts on some of the short and intermediate throws and the ball sails on me. Like, those were the types of things that you saw. I went and rewatched the entire LSU game, and I was more impressed with Lagway than I was with Nussmeier in terms of reading the defense, getting the ball out quickly. Even on the short throws, I thought he did pretty well in that one. There were a couple that he missed, but he was also taking 10-yard shots down the field rather than 2-yard shots down the field. So I am incredibly confident that if a healthy DJ Lagway is on the field, he's going to play very well for Florida this year. The issue that I have is that if he's not 100% healthy, then that becomes a little bit more difficult. And if he's protecting something specifically, then does that bring another injury along the way? A lot of times the first injury isn't the thing that actually isn't the thing that causes the major problem. It's okay, he can't get away from a defensive lineman and now all of a sudden gets rolled up on an ankle, or heaven forbid there's a non-contact injury that's caused because he's putting more weight on one foot than the other. So she was all the time, I'm getting old, man. I hurt my knee. I start favoring my left leg and all of a sudden the right leg hurts. It's like, oh crap. Like, this sucks. Now look, he's 19 years old, right? So should be a quick healer, should be ready to get out there. And, I think there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation. That's for sure. But at least this moment is 7-8 weeks before the games you actually need him for. And so in an ideal world, he would be out there getting rep after rep after rep after rep and be completely healthy. But this is way better than, hey, a week before the season starts, all of a sudden he's in the boot with a calf strain, right? So you think about when something like this could have happened, better that it happens now than it happens a week or two before the season opens. And then you really are playing that game of, oh crap, how healthy does he need to be able to play? Because let's be honest, Harrison Bailey has 171 throws in his career. We saw Aiden Warner last year. I think folks would appreciate not seeing that again. And so, there's concerns when it comes to everything behind Lagway, especially considering what Florida is expected to do this year. I mean, everybody is basically picking him top 15. They're doing that on the backs of this particular quarterback. And so if he's not out there, we got problems. And I think there are people who, there has been optimism from me, which is rare, all off season long, but it's been because of Lagway specifically. And so, until we have more information, it's all just speculation, but it's also one of those things where, you do have to take the long look at it. And this is a spot where the playoff race and the fact that you can lose 2 or 3 games really does make a difference, right? That you don't have to rush someone back because you don't have to go 12-0. And so there is I don't want this to happen. In an ideal world, he'd be playing, obviously. But at the same time, if you need to protect him early on in the year, you could take an L. And even then, I think the committee would take that into account, right? Yeah. If Florida ends up going 2-1 to open the year and Lagway doesn't play in any of those 3 games, and then he comes back and they go, 7-2 the rest of the year, and you're sitting there looking at a 9-3 team, but they lost to Texas and they lost to Georgia and then just demolished everybody else. That's a playoff resume regardless of what happens the first 3 games of the year. So there is more margin for error, which means that the concerns you might have had 5, 6, 7 years ago about a starting quarterback going out. I remember this exact argument or the exact discussion around Tim Tebow, right? And it wasn't necessarily that he was injured. It was, should Urban Meyer be running him as much as he is because you need to protect him? And it was, no, like, this is the way this guy plays football. We're going to keep putting him out there. And then you got the concussion in the Kentucky game and, the question of, do you rush him back for the LSU game the next week and all that stuff that goes on. Nowadays, you wouldn't be able to play the guy, right?
Yeah.
After something like that. But, this isn't a new story. This isn't a new narrative. It turns out when you have a Heisman Trophy level or Heisman Trophy potential candidate at quarterback, when you lose the guy or when the guy has a nick, it's a big deal and a big story because you kind of need that level of quarterback play to compete in college football unless you've got recruiting like Texas, like Ohio State, like Georgia, like Alabama.
Yeah. One more angle and we'll move on and kind of go into Sam Adams' point. We've hit on this a little bit, but he says another year, I think we won't be able to see the full playbook due to them favoring hamstring calf. Will, you hit on that a little bit earlier too. And I do wonder, does this change the approach from the staff on how to use Lagway? Obviously he can win a lot of games as a pocket quarterback, but will there be more of an emphasis on him being more than that? Like, you brought up the point, and I had a private conversation on Twitter DMs, and somebody he said, "Oh, we should just make him a pocket passer," and I was like, well, I mean, keeping him in the pocket can be just as dangerous. And, if he's able to run, if he's able to escape the pocket, but it's been beaten to his head, hey, we don't want you to run, and he stays in the pocket and takes an unnecessary hit. Well, that's just as dangerous to me. So when a play breaks down, he's still got to use his legs, or will he be taught to throw the ball away more and stay away from taking hits? But to me, that's also taking away the ability of some of those unscripted plays with his legs. If he's going to be either trained to stay in the pocket and then throw the ball away and not take off, so I think it'd be hard to coach out of him. But does it change how much they would run Lagway on design runs? I would think so a little bit. I don't think you want to run him a ton regardless of injury status, but does the staff feel like they need to move even further away from it? He could be a weapon with his legs, so it is a delicate balance. You don't want to hold the offense back, but you need your quarterback. You need Lagway in the lineup. So, look, there's a time and place for when to run him, and I'd love to see the full DJ Lagway, but I think the question is, do we get to see the full DJ Lagway?
Yeah, I think what we will see is we will see Florida put him out there when they think he's healthy and able to play. And I don't think they'll necessarily change what they're trying to do when it comes to that. Now, they will have different game plans depending on who they're playing.
Right.
I seriously doubt they're going to have a bunch of designed runs against the Sharks to open the season.
Right, exactly.
But,
not even one. You don't even call one in that game.
But I've been surprised before, Dave. So after the first 2 drives, when we've had 3 quarterback draws, you and I will both be texting each other going, what the heck's going on here?
What we won't know is if he calls his own number sometimes, and it looks like that. But
I'll tell you, the thing that I wonder about is that, one of the things that really separates the good quarterbacks from the great quarterbacks is their ability to get you out of a bad play.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's the, oh crap, I see this blitz coming. Can I get out of it? And it's not even necessarily that you gain yardage, it's just that you don't lose 5, 6, 7 yards. And so Burrow was excellent at this. That was one of the things you noticed even in the first year when he struggled. He made a couple of adjustments in that first game against Miami where he changed the gap where LSU was going to run. They hit a couple of gash runs against the Hurricanes in their opener that year. And that was really a recognition of what was going on in the defense. So I don't know. I don't have like a strong opinion as to whether the reps are what's critical for being able to make those sorts of changes at the line of scrimmage, or whether the mental aspect of the game that he's been working on with O'Hara and with Callaway is more important for those sorts of things. But I think what you're going to see early on is you can avoid getting hit as a quarterback. You can avoid having those plays where you're getting chased. You can avoid the big losses. You can avoid having to be a big quarterback who takes a hit if you make the right adjustment at the line of scrimmage, if you get yourself out of a bad play. if you decide, hey, I'm going to take the 7-yard gain here rather than running around trying to get the Johnny Manziel hit down the field. And so that'll be the question is I think quarterbacks tend to default to the breakdown plays or the scramble plays because they don't see the stuff that's easy to take in front of them. So, I'm actually probably going to be looking more for, can he execute the easy stuff early on? Does he check out of some stuff when a defense comes up and shows blitz? Does he start altering the snap count when he's at the line of scrimmage to try to understand exactly what the defense is doing? Have they given him the freedom to audible out of different plays? And there we might actually see some quarterback runs because DJ Lagway feels good and decides to audible to something where he's running. And so, those will be the things I think, and at that point, half Gator Nation will be like, how dare Napier and Callaway run the kid and put him at risk?
Exactly.
He checked out into that.
That's where I was going with that earlier, yes.
No, we'll see. Maybe they'll limit his freedom early on and won't allow him to do that. But, look, if they're going to – I guess the question comes down to, when it comes to play calling, is does Florida want to make the playoffs or does Florida want to be presentable? And if you want to be presentable, you can protect the guy all year long. But if you want to make the playoffs, you got to go out and you got to actually really play, because you're not going to be able to go into Baton Rouge. You're not going to be able to go into Texas A&M and just kind of half-ass it. Like, the team isn't good enough for that. No team, honestly, other than some of the really top-tier teams in the country, is good enough to sort of half go in and go, well, we're going to protect our quarterback. You don't have that luxury when you play teams in the SEC. You got to actually go for it. And, look, it might be that going for it causes an injury. It might be that going for it exposes Lagway in a way where everyone's going to second-guess Napier. But the reality is the first 3 years of the Napier era have caused him to be in a situation where he has to take a risk moving forward this year, because you just have to. That's where he sits in terms of the program overall. If he was, he's 19-19 right now overall in 38 games. If he was 30-8, no, everybody'd be like, bubble wrap, keep the kid safe. Like, we have the patience and the confidence in your ability to get the most out of the guys around Lagway, that if you need to give him more time, go ahead. Nobody has that. In fact, the question I've gotten all offseason, and I have an article in the preseason magazine called The Napier Conundrum, is I understand why people are like, I don't trust that guy. Like, I get completely why people say that. But then on the other side, you've got a phenom at quarterback who can lead them to the promised land. And if Napier leaving means Lagway leaves, then, I understand that argument as well. And this season is really sort of proving out that entire concept. And so, like I said, Napier himself has sort of laid the bed or made the bed, and now he's got to sleep in it. And sleeping in it is going to be, they're going to have to be aggressive with their quarterback and with the quarterback play, because out of everything on this team, there are some areas where Florida has very solid play, but there's only one spot where I think they have a true difference maker, and that's DJ Lagway. And that's why we're talking about it for a half hour tonight, right?
There you go. So, yeah, that would be the last bit there. We'll see if anything more comes out. Open practice on Saturday for Florida Victorious members, and the media would not expect much there, but we'll see if he's, what that holds, but wouldn't expect anything, with him being limited. So, but we see day to day, and we'll see what that means there for the Gators. So, hey, other injuries, Will, that Napier went into that also falls in that day to day category. Linebacker Pup Howard, running back Trayon Webb, wide receiver Khalil Jackson, and offensive lineman Tavares Dice. You would assume, in here with Pup Howard, Trayon Webb, still recovery, some recovery from their last season injuries, making sure they're ready to go. Khalil Jackson, we know, just had another recent minor surgery for his knee issue. And then offensive lineman Tavares Dice, true freshman, not expected to contribute much this year anyway. So, and then some really, really good news on the injury front. One name that wasn't mentioned in there was one nickel corner Aaron Gates. And Billy Napier did go on to say, as he was asked about that, quote, Aaron is on schedule, obviously still in a brace a little bit. Anytime a guy's an ACL guy, as you get into training camp, we'll be monitoring his volume closely. But he's been a full participator here as of late. These guys are typically there. It will be a day or two where we'll pull them. But, yeah, he's had an incredible road back I think he's been a really good example to everybody of how you attack the rehab process and looks great. So obviously a really good player for us. So doesn't seem like anything too major as far as other injuries go, but really, really good news. Great news there for Aaron Gates. Pairing him now with Sharif Denson makes it where Florida has that really good option that they had late last season at the nickel spot, depth at the nickel spot. So really good news with Aaron Gates. Good news that no major injuries. Maybe, hopefully, Pup Howard, Trayon Webb, and those contributors are back soon. But really, really good news on Gates and him being, sounds like, near ready to go, full go.
Yeah, well, I mean, for Gates, that's an attitude thing, right? I mean, last year when he was on the field, Florida, the attitude and the toughness of Florida's defense seemed different. And, certainly there were a bunch of backside tackles that he made where it's like, I haven't seen a backside tackle in 5 years. Like, that's awesome. And it's funny because if you look at PFF and sort of the advanced stat type rankings, Gates wasn't like this significant jump off the page type of player, but just solid at that position was a significant upgrade from what Florida's gotten. And certainly we've talked a lot about the safeties when it comes to Castell and Bryce Thornton, but having a guy like Gates being able to step in there and contribute and run support out of the star and those sorts of things obviously then frees those guys up to maybe even play a little bit deeper, which is really what Ron Roberts did last year. That's where the Pup Howard injury does concern me, though, depending upon what it is and exactly what that means, because one of the things...
Still the ankle.
Yeah. Well, but one of the things that Ron Roberts did last year was he really got conservative with the safeties, but he also got conservative with the defensive line. He didn't drop those guys into coverage, and he trusted his linebackers. Now, Howard was out for a lot of that last year, and so you got Miles Graham and Aaron Childs and some of the other guys that are there. But at the same time, I think Howard is the one who, one, has the most experience, but two, really is the guy that you want there in the middle. And so, we'll see where that.
Yeah, Jaden Robinson really stepping up.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see where that goes. Florida certainly has a lot of depth in the linebacker room, which is something we haven't been able to say for a while. But again, I still think depth for Florida is one of the biggest things. Is one of the biggest stories of the year. We're already seeing it as we're talking about, just a couple of injuries. Now you get the injuries at the wrong spot, and all of a sudden you're really scrambling. Quarterback obviously is number one. But linebacker is going to be one of those spots as well. And then having Gates back means you could sustain an injury to a guy like Denson, have him out for a couple of weeks, or even Gates, have him out for a couple of weeks, and you're not necessarily completely stripped bare. So
that's a good point. Good thing there is they're in no rush to have Gates back with Denson and playing LIU and playing USF to week 2. So good on not having to play Utah and Miami game 1 right now with the Lagway stuff too. But for some of these other players in the bumps and bruises, should be a-okay by the time Florida travels to Baton Rouge as well.
I mean, we shall see. I think I've said this all offseason is that inferior teams, or at least teams that are not elite, they struggle late in the season on the road, and Florida's road games are all front loaded. And so they should have those games when most of their roster is healthy, again, assuming that Lagway's ready to go when those games go, but they should be as healthy as they're going to be for that first slate of road games. And so Florida's going to make a run this year. They're going, maybe they will sustain some injuries and their depth will be tested, but at least it'll be tested in the swamp rather than being tested on the road. If you look at some of the teams that lost late last year and knocked themselves out of the playoffs, folks like Ole Miss who came to Gainesville. And I mean, I don't think anybody thinks that Florida was a better team than Ole Miss last year overall, but that's a very even battle when Lagway plays pretty well and when you got the home crowd and both teams are beaten up. And so, as the teams get more and more beaten up, as the injuries mount, as the attrition starts to happen, the talent level between different teams starts to really close, and that home road split starts to matter. You saw that with Alabama last year as well, losing on the road quite a bit as well. So that's something I'd be looking for, is if Florida can be healthy in those road games early on, it sets them up to maybe pull out a close 1 or 2 at the Swamp later in the year, because really they've only got the Ole Miss game on the road and then the Georgia game obviously at the neutral site, but they've only got the Ole Miss game on the road. on the back end of their schedule. So there's an opportunity here to take an advantage, again, assuming that these guys are all healthy. And look, I mean, we're only talking about a couple of guys. Like usually, I mean, the last couple of years, the injury reports have been like 20 guys.
Well, go back to the injury report against Texas last year and Ole Miss and LSU and just how many names were on there. So certainly this is, besides Lagway, of course, just because that name weighs a lot. It is good to hear that, day to day on some of those guys, and Aaron Gates making really great progress coming back from injury. So, all right, we have went a little long, so we got to hear from Russ Callaway and Ron Roberts still. So, look, we got plenty of time. Camp's just starting, so we will definitely dive deeper into position groupings and all that stuff coming up in the coming weeks right here on Gators Breakdown. But right now, let's hear from Offensive Coordinator Russ Callaway discussing the Florida Gators offense from a collaborative effort from the staff and the personnel groupings. And we'll hear from Billy Napier on the same thing as well.
How does the collaborative effort work? Like, how many guys are in the room? I mean, is it bouncing ideas off each other, different, situations? And
that's a great question. Really kind of how we do it, it's everything we do is collaborative, all right? And we have different ways to do it when we meet all together, and we kind of assign different type roles, things to, look at, study, and then we come back. And then some things are separate, and then we come together and say, hey, this is kind of, what we see, and again, bouncing ideas. And the main thing is it's not creating the idea, because we have, enough plays, just very similar to everybody. It's about getting the right people the ball, making sure that we got the protection sound, we got the route concept sound, the way that we're calling it, so it's consistent with the people signaling. But to answer your question, it's kind of a mix of both. Sometimes we'll start together and then split up, and then sometimes we're separate, but hey, on Tuesday morning we're going to meet on these 4 or 5 things. And I think we got it mapped out pretty good, along with Coach Napier, myself, and the whole offensive staff. And it's way more than just me, him, and whoever else. It's everybody. So that's how we do it.
Are you orchestrating that more so now in the new role?
I would just say it's really kind of similar to how we did it the last couple of years. Some things have just been a little bit structured differently. I've taken on more of some things, which is normal, I guess. But no, it's just like he was asking. We've kind of taken another step in that development. We don't just stay stagnant how we've done it the last 2 years. We do try to improve it. We study NFL teams, other college teams. Hey, how do y'all do it? How do you see this? And stuff's naturally going to change anyway. But I'd say for the last 2 years, just been pretty consistent with a couple enhancements of kind of how we done it.
State secrets, but when we talked to you back in spring, right before spring camp, we asked you about seeing 4 wide receivers out there in the field. Now that you spent the last couple of months around them, how much more confident are you that just the wealth of options you have, you're going to have to try and find a way to get them all in the field? Yeah,
I just think, look, it's at the end of the day, it's about getting the best 11 on the field, period. And of the week-to-week basis, we may think 11's better. We may think 12's better. We may think 13's better, 10's, whatever. We may not even have a personnel grouping that we think may be better, but it's all about, that's the genesis. That's where it starts. And, to say that we're going to do that this year for sure, don't know. We might not. But I do think there's some things that we can do, not just with the receiver room, but the running back room and the tight end room, to kind of get, a lot more people involved. And that's kind of been the goal starting last spring throughout summer. And we're going to continue on that way.
Billy, Russ said that how the offense has evolved is that now you have more players that you can get the ball to. Mm-hmm. Would you talk about how you see how the offense has evolved since you've come here?
Yeah, I think we probably have more players that we would plan around. I think one of the things we've been able to do is take the 3 or 4 skill guys that we've had and really be creative and get them the ball. I think we have more of those on that list now, which is a good thing. You build your system around what the quarterback can do and what he does well, and then you build it around the skill players that you have. And I think that's the fun part of coaching, is building that identity. And look, it's got to be flexible enough to win every week, depending on the opponent, the strengths and weaknesses of that week. But I like the pieces that we have. We certainly there's more of them, and that's a good thing.
Well, I know it's a conversation we've had plenty this offseason. How much involved will Russ Callaway be? Will it in game planning, in actual play calling on game day? We talked about an independent Gator Media Day on Sunday, and there's some thought out there that Russ Callaway might be more involved on game day, and there's still some that, hey, we got to see it to believe it, because we kind of heard the same thing last year and all that. And then Nick De La Torre brings up a good point. He's like, hey, why are you going to hand over keys to a Lamborghini? You got the Lamborghini now if you're Billy Napier and DJ Lagway's your quarterback, and now you're going to hand over play calling? Does that really make a lot of sense? So there's a lot of ways to look at it. I don't even know if we'll really get a true answer. I think Billy Napier's pretty protective and secretive over that. I think the blame goes to him if he does. Even if he has another play caller, will we really know? I think he has no issue with the blame going to him if it doesn't work or anything of the like. But it's just been a question since Russ Callaway's been promoted and now has that sole offensive coordinator title. And then we also with this wide receiver room, and we all like the talent there. Does Florida have the ability to open it up? We think they do. They've recruited that position really well. They've recruited a lot of speed at that position. And they said, look, we're going to do it with what our quarterback can do. Well, if your quarterback's got that big time downfield arm and you got a lot of speed at receiver, you think it would lend itself to some more receivers getting on the field and some downfield shots. And it goes back to a conversation I had last week too, Will, and kind of stemming off of what Billy Napier ended with there. I just want an offense that can do what they need to do when they need to be able to do it. If you need to run the ball 50 times and win the game, then be able to do so. If you need Lagway to throw the ball 45 times a game and go 4 or 5 wide and need to do that to win a game, then be able to do so. Be flexible. We'd all love to see 4 or 5 wide and 50 points a game. I don't know how realistic that is. I just want an offense that's going to go win me some ball games. I don't care how it's done.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I look at it and say the first thing that I heard there in those clips was, well, we're not really doing much different than we had the last couple of years. So I don't know how much we should expect it to be different. Like we sit there and look and go, oh, they're going to go 4 and 5 wide. No, they're not. They're not going to. And quite honestly, I don't know if they need to. I mean, I'm
glad you said that.
They had a top 5 offense with DJ Lagway at quarterback. When you look, so Nick Knudsen for our magazine went and charted every single play that every quarterback took. Actually, he did both offense and defense, but we were able to sort it based on the quarterback who was there in the game. And when Lagway was in the game, they averaged something like 6.7 yards per play, which would have been like 5th in the country. Would have been up and down the field, just like Oregon, just like Ohio State. And that's what they had. So like the play calling part becomes critical when you don't have the horses to make the big plays constantly. Now, does that mean the Lagway doesn't have areas to improve? Does that mean they can't get better at certain circumstances, certain play calls in certain circumstances? I mean, certainly I think they'll have different go-to plays than they did in the first half against Tennessee last year when it just seemed like sort of a hodgepodge of different things that they were trying to do there. But I'm not expecting anything all that different. Whether Callaway's calling the plays or Napier's calling the plays, it's not really going to be that big of a difference. I think the reality is that they're either going to have a top 5 offense because Lagway is awesome, or they're going to have a top 30 offense because he's not. And, it comes down to him.
Yeah. And my thing too, okay, don't get me wrong. And I've said it before. I've said it when we have been here together. Yeah, I'd love 4 wide because I like what Florida has at receiver. So, yeah, and I think they probably will open it up some. This is not going to be for 4 wide, 5 wide, play in, play out. But would you even want it to be? I mean, we like what this offensive line returns. We love our running back room. You want those guys to still get the ball. And look, 12 personnel is, helps in that run game. So they're going to stick to that a good bit in that run game. But yeah, I would not mind seeing it opened up a bit more because I do like your weapons at receiver. I do think a lot of your bigger plays can happen in that regard. But at the same time, I want to feed Ball. I want to feed Jackson. I want to feed Webb and let that offensive line get in the groove as well.
Well, I mean, so it comes back to, and we've said this a few times, I think this is kind of what you were saying earlier, is you want the Florida offense to dictate to the defense.
Absolutely.
Rather than the defense dictating the Florida offense. So if the defense brings a bunch of guys up to the line of scrimmage, okay, well, now we're not going to run the ball.
Yeah.
Or maybe we even have the ability to run the ball even if you bring those guys in the box, because we've got 9 guys returning on the offensive line who should be able to maul the opposition, right?
And in that position, saw the game away. Okay, they're going to load the box, but you got to be able to run the ball anyway.
Well, and again, if you score 30 points that way, that's fine, right?
Yeah.
Because the other team, like if you look at that LSU game last year, LSU, the only reason that game was even remotely close is LSU ran 92 plays to Florida's like 44. Like that's why that game was close. Now, I mean, I would say that's an inefficient way to win a ball game, but and they didn't win that game because they couldn't put the ball in the end zone. But I mean, I don't think that's ideal, but I think the premise is the same, right? That you want to be able to win a game where you have to run 92 plays. You want to be able to win a game where you run 41 plays. And, to be able to take advantage of those sorts of things. But I think, again, it sort of comes back to if the defense is getting into drop 8, one of the things that you can do is you can essentially air raid them. You send 5 guys deep, and there's only 4 guys to cover them. and it's a pretty easy read for the quarterback, and there's some sort of open space out there somewhere. And so, yes, there are adjustments that they can make where in the places where Lagway struggled, you can give them some opportunities. Now, there is a catch-22 to going 4 wide or 5 wide, which is that now you actually have to protect. Or you have to have site adjustments off of the defensive alignment, right? So if the defense comes on a blitz and you've got 5 wide, you got to have something off of that. That's where the reps, all the stuff we're talking about, Lagway being able to make either pre-snap adjustments or being able to make site adjustments after he identifies the blitz post-snap. Like those are things where that's the ball that gets taken the other way, right?
Yeah,
where the quarterback sees a site adjustment and throws the ball, and the wide receiver just runs straight. And all of a sudden, you got a ball coming the other direction.
There you go. Your connection on hot routes, as you're saying, with blitz and the wide receiver and the quarterback got to be on the same page for those type of plays.
Man, go watch Anthony Richardson against Kentucky if you want to see a wide receiver and a quarterback not on the same page when they're trying to make a side adjustment on a blitz.
Oh, well, AR's name coming up again. But good example there. Good example. All right, let's go to defense and wrap it up here. Let's hear from Billy Napier as well for that side of the ball, about and Ron Roberts, and kind of just. The theme here, Will, of course, is the defense is kind of picking up where they left off from last season. So we'll hear from Billy Napier and defensive coordinator Ron Roberts.
Yeah, I think it's ultimately, if you really take a good look at what we were able to do last year, a lot of the turnaround was playing better on defense. I think after the first month, probably Central Florida on, we played, good enough to win on defense outside of the Texas game. We're in position in Jacksonville, we're in position in Knoxville as a result of playing really good defense. I think we did a good job affecting the quarterback. We created takeaways, and we played good red zone defense, and we kept the point total in a place. So I think the depth is there, all 3 levels of the defense. We have some young players that we're going to have to develop in the secondary that don't have a ton of experience, but every other spot, I think there's a lot of players that have played football. The front, I'm excited about seeing the progress we can make with the second tier of players on defense in training camp. I think it's an important part of this puzzle.
What clicked down the stretch last year, and how do you kind of continue that build on that? Because November, when you look at the sheer numbers, sacks, takeaways, et cetera, were significantly improved.
Yeah. There's probably several things involved with that. One was probably, I think, anytime, it's, there's some changeover, there's, staff get on the same page, it's even, guys' familiarity with the system, how we want things done, all that. So there's part of that. And then there was the thing, I think, there were some things we changed practice-wise to increase, but I think the big thing came in was, which I thought was, there was a little confidence and a belief kind of maybe issue, I think there's multitude of things that went that really contributed to the turnaround.
What's the key to kind of build on that? I mean, you lost some key guys, obviously Cam and Shamar and some guys, but how do you build on that?
Well, we've been building on that since then. It doesn't ever stop. You go right there. You go into spring, and you go into identity period and weight room, off-season training, goes to spring ball and all that stuff. And I think our guys have done a tremendous job with that as far as just setting the standard of the work ethic, what's acceptable on a day-to-day basis, how are you supposed to go about your business, how do you handle every situation, and I think our guys have done a tremendous job of that in the off-season and preparing themselves to get ready. I think our summer was outstanding. I really do. I think I'm real excited about this season, just like where we are as a standpoint right now, as a football team, as a defense, as a staff continuity, all those things. I think I'm real excited about this season. Look forward to getting fall camp.
Ron, from a leadership standpoint, who are your go-to guys on your defensive unit?
Well, the thing, probably the best thing, and you're trying to work for this situation, is that we have multiple. I say go-to guys. I'm gonna obviously. If something was whatever issue, or if something was I need to get credit. Sapp would be probably the first one I'm going to. You know what I mean? I think the back room obviously and Jaden Robinson, is deep. I think anything in the back end, we got guys where we Bryce or Jordan or Sharif. Corner position, we got Devin Moore, Dede. Those guys are all. We got a bunch of leaders, which is exciting to see. And that's what you want. You don't want it to come down to 2 or 3. You want more than that are taking the reins, and be able to lead your program at any time.
Well, good thing with so many players coming back is, look, there really should be that many leaders, guys stepping up. And when you have Banks and Sapp coming back, you expect to hear, you know what, the area we want to be as far as leadership goes, we can go down a list of them. Because besides Cam Jackson's, the contributors return, and they got a taste of what it's like, from the preparation to the practice to the accountability and performance. They know what it takes. So I think you pair that with Ron Roberts returning, the main voice of the defense. That's finally the same for the defense with so many players returning. That should contribute to a defense that can keep up that late season run from last year. And we go back to that, and look, we, like you said, spent the first half hour on DJ Lagway and the importance that he brings to the table. But at that same time, it was that defensive turnaround at the end of the year. We want to get away from a bend, don't break. We want to see this defense take steps, and with so many guys returning, you think that can happen. But they are. Well, that's the best stretch of Gator defense since 2019. There have been performances here or there, but I think one reason Gator Nation's a bit excited for that side of the ball too was that was a 4-game stretch we have not seen in quite some time.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things there. One is I think Roberts is being a little bit humble when he's talking about all the other things that actually turn things around. They went through a fundamental philosophy shift after the bye week. You can see it in the stats. We highlighted it in our preseason magazine. You can see a very definitive shift in terms of what Florida was doing. They stopped dropping their defensive linemen into coverage. They started allowing their linebackers to play more free, and they stopped putting their corners on an island. And so the question I have coming into this year, and I think you said we want to get away from a more bend but don't break defense, and I kind of think they want to lean more into it. Like, I think linebackers who now have a second year in that process are going to be able to close that gap a little bit faster. So you think about a lot of the third down conversions that LSU had last year. Well, they were ones where they got it by a yard or two, right? And it was because maybe a guy was a little bit slow in pursuit, didn't quite close the zone as fast as you would want, missed a tackle when they did have the opportunity to close the zone. Like, there were breakdowns still, but the breakdowns didn't cost Florida points because they had enough guys behind it that the breakdowns didn't kill them. You think about like the Tampa 2, and you think about like the way that Dungy was able to really sort of turn that into a defense because of guys like Derek Brooks. And the linebackers make such a big difference in that defense. And the linebackers is where Florida has a lot of talent and a lot of speed. And I think they're going to lean more towards exactly what they did through the back half of last year, which is a lot of too high safety and relying on the defensive line and the linebackers to both flow and stop the run game. And then they're going to rely on gang tackling and being a little bit more disciplined at closing those gaps so that on 3rd and 6, you tackle the guy at 5 rather than allowing him to slip through a little, you still get him to the ground, but he's able to fall forward and get 7, and it's a first down. And I think if you go watch that LSU game, you can see it in real time as Florida was a little bit slow closing some of those gaps. LSU was able to get a bunch of conversions and go up and down the field. Now, I think that's really the continuity in the defensive coordinator that makes a difference, is that now you've got a full year, a full off season. You didn't install a completely different philosophy in week 4 of the season. Now you've had it all off season long. And so I don't know if they go blitz crazy. I don't know that they have the personnel to necessarily be blitz crazy. I think the thing they did last year was they stopped it. They got more conservative. They said, we're going to win the one-on-one battles up front. We're going to challenge our guys to just go, like to use their instincts and go. And I don't think they're going to back away from that. I think one of the reasons you saw Caleb Banks excel, one of the reasons you saw Tyreek Sapp excel is because they said, go do what you do best, big boy. Like, we are not going to have you drop into coverage and try to cover a tight end or try to cover a slot receiver in a zone. Like, that's the personnel did not match what guys like Austin Armstrong and Patrick Toney were trying to do. I think that, honestly, this was the question I asked coming into last year, was that the bend but don't break is something that Ron Roberts learned at Baylor. He was much more like Patrick Toney and Austin Armstrong when he was at Louisiana before. He goes to Baylor under Dave Aranda. They played a much more conservative brand of defense, but a much more successful brand of defense as well. Comes to Florida in week 4, all of a sudden we hear rumblings over who's calling the defensive plays. And lo and behold, the defensive play calls are way more conservative once it became pretty clear that Roberts was in charge. And so that's kind of what I'm expecting on the defensive side of the ball. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that this is a time to change what you do. I think it's actually a time to double down on it because, like you said, that's the defensive performance we haven't seen in 5 years. And now you've got guys a second year in that system. If they can execute even better, it'll feel like the zones are smaller, right? Like, it'll be one of those things where, like, it won't feel as bend but don't breaky because they'll be getting off the field a lot more, because they'll be getting arms in on those passes that are going into tight zones. They'll sort of know where they can take chances and where they can't.
Yeah, I guess that's probably what I meant. I don't need teams living in the red zone. And all right, well, you held them to a field goal. Okay, less of that. Can you get away for 12 games the performances of Ole Miss and LSU? There was good performances. Don't get me wrong, but there was more so Ole Miss than LSU. So many missed chances from that offense. Can you replicate those turnovers again? It was 25 turnovers last year. Can you replicate the turnover numbers again? I think is something that can vary from season to season. And they stunk the year before that, and Florida is able to turn teams over, the last year. So they don't get those number of turnovers, and we saw that play huge dividends late against Ole Miss. I guess going to your point, it may look less. I guess the philosophy bend don't break, it still holds a place. But to your point, being able to get off the field on third down, where you keep them out of field goal range, you keep them out of the red zone. That's more what I'm looking for. More dominant defense where you're causing more punts, get your offense the ball a little bit more.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the Tampa 2 defense was not something that was like, oh, we're just going to let you drive into the red zone and then we're going to stop you. Like, that was a very specific defensive alignment and defensive philosophy that was incredibly effective in the NFL for a very long time. And same thing with like the 46 defense of the Bears and some of the simulated pressures when you look at teams like Alabama and Georgia, that has a place and is successful. But in many cases, what we're really talking about is we're talking middle of the field open or middle of the field closed. And fundamentally, Patrick Toney and Austin Armstrong were middle of the field closed defensive coaches, where you have one safety in the middle of the field. You're playing cover 1, you're playing cover 3. And there are holes in between those guys down the seams. What Ron Roberts was last year when he took over the play calling, and what he was at Baylor, was a middle of the field open coach, where you're going to have to hit it between those two safeties going straight down the middle of the field, or you're going to have to hit it outside. And I actually think in college football, that's probably the way to go, because it means you're challenging the quarterback to make throws that only a few of them can make. And it might be that when you play Texas, Arch Manning's able to make those throws, and you have to get a little bit more creative. But look, when it comes to the USFs and the Sharks of the world and that sort of stuff, I don't think you're going to need to do that. And honestly, I don't think you're going to need to make any adjustments off of that for LSU or Texas A&M. I'm doubtful you'll have to make adjustments off of that for Georgia. Certainly won't for Florida State. Like, I start looking at the quarterbacks Florida's going to face, and I go, make them throw you out of it.
And what we saw, Carson Beck, turnover machine against the Gator defense last year. Jackson Dart, the Ole Miss quarterback, turnover machine against that defense last year. So, yeah,
they made Jackson Dart cry. I don't want to change too much from that, man.
Absolutely. And going to your point, and a lot of those turnovers there with Jackson Dart and Ole Miss, I mean, you brought it up when you were just explaining the defense. How many defenders did you see around the ball? It wasn't just one guy in position to make a play. There were multiple Gators there, multiple defenders down the field in position to make those plays.
Well, and it's funny because on one of those final drives, Dart hit a pretty big run for himself and went running down the field. And that actually is the risk when you start dropping and those sorts of things. But if your defensive line is winning, then you don't have the opportunity to do those sorts of things. So it's all symbiotic, right? I mean, if the defensive line gets no pressure, somebody's going to come open in the zone, right?
Well, I think last year's defense does not work, or that late season November run does not work if Sapp and Banks and Jackson aren't going crazy like they did.
Well, and look, I mean, again, I went back because I specifically wanted to look at the Nussmeier versus Lagway comparison, and there were guys roaming free that Nussmeier just didn't pull the trigger. And, now the defensive line gave him some happy feet. And also there were guys flashing in front of him, even when they weren't getting to him, that probably made him pull the ball down.
Because he wasn't getting hit like that all year long until that game.
Well, and he didn't really get hit like that until the second half. Right. In the second half, Florida took over. And that's sort of what I'm talking about. You get a beat up offensive line late in the year on the road. And that place was electric. You and I were both there. That place was electric. And you have all of those things, sort of a confluence for the defensive line being able to get off the ball but look, there were 4 NFL offensive linemen, 4 guys who got drafted on that LSU offensive line.
And what's his name? The third pick in the draft?
Yeah, for the Patriots. I can't remember what his name is. But,
it escapes me. I know it, but yeah.
We will find it at some point along the way. But it doesn't matter. He got dominated by Florida's defensive line. Well, I mean, it's funny because I've said this repeatedly. I've been interviewed a few times where I've been talking about, what does Florida need to see on the defensive line to really improve? And the thing that I've said is they need to find an outside pass rusher, like whether it's Gums. I'm hoping it's LJ McCray, like whoever it is.
I'm claiming right now it's going to be both of them.
All right. Well, whoever it is, if they can get a guy coming off the edge to where you can't double team anyone on the defensive line and where you don't have to blitz ever because you can get pressure, now all of a sudden everything Roberts wants to do works really, really well. And I'm just thrilled that I'm not going to have to see George Gums or LJ McCray rushing with a running back down the field on a wheel route, trying to pick the guy up, because that's not the philosophy that Florida has on defense. And, there are times where that is an appropriate defense to call, but 17 times a game, not it. So I'm happy we won't see that anymore.
Here. No, that's a Houston Cougars problem. No.
And wherever Patrick Toney is, I don't know where Arizona Cardinals. He's still with the Cardinals.
Is he still the Cardinals? Let's see.
I don't know.
Excuse me, as I know you can. I think he's still there.
Well, as long as
yes, he's still there. Defensive back coach for the Cardinals.
As long as Human Milan didn't get unlucky enough to be on his defense again, because they laid that guy out to dry so many times.
That they did. Hey, Dave Sertiquist popping in late right here.
Reporting the news, man.
He's just reporting the news. He was there Sunday too. It was a good time. Maybe. Yeah. Well, I think we are going to try and do it multiple times a year, by the way. So.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, hopefully, I can actually.
Yeah.
I was out watching my son pitch on Sunday, so it was a There's a reason that I missed.
Was it 100 degrees up there too?
No, I mean, not quite that hot, but it's still hot up here in Philly. I'm not wearing my normal sweatshirt. Hey, so two things. The sweatshirt that Napier and Callaway was wearing, oh my God, those things are awesome. I want those.
I know.
But are they psychotic wearing a sweatshirt in the state of Florida in July? Like, what is going on here?
I've never seen Napier. I've never seen Napier in a short sleeve shirt ever. I don't think.
This is why I think this is why I think Roberts is the key to everything. He was the only one wearing a polo. It's like that guy's like football tough. Everybody else is like, oh, my arms are cold.
You buried the lead. Napier wasn't wearing black.
Well, his PR got a hold of him and said, "Hey, maybe you don't want to look like the Undertaker in a year where you need to."
No, it's all about me and the one-on-one I had with him back in February, asking the question of why he's wearing black. So he was like, "Oh, I guess so." Nah.
I mean, it was all fine when he was at Louisiana and the colors were red and black. Come on, man.
Well, remember the reason he gave. It was a kind of black flag mentality, but just go win some games.
Yeah, seriously.
Just go win some games. Bernard says, I've never seen Napier in blue. Yeah, I think the only other time on the sideline, I think it was against Texas A&M last year, and they had the raincoats on. And I think he was in a – here we are talking fashion. What are we doing here? This is
all I know is he should have burned whatever he wore against Texas. That's all I know. So.
Yep. But, but you're right. That might be one of those team-issued things. I hope it's not, because – I heard a lot of people liking that sweater that Callaway and Napier were, but I'm not wearing mine in July. I'll wait till December or January. But, I want one as well.
Look, I live in a place where I can wear it 7 months a year, so they're just taking the money out of my pocket if they make that thing available. It's really what it comes down to.
Florida, are you listening? You make enough money, but you want more money, print those things. Print those things.
I mean, I don't know. Whatever. Gator or Florida Victorious. Tell Nick we got to get this thing going.
We'll call up the guys at Alma Mater as well and see if they can help and print them out. So, there we go. All right, fall camp. All right, here we go. Practice on Wednesday. So we'll see anything comes out of that. As I said, open practice on Saturday. I'm going to try and make my way down to Gainesville for that. I got some things I might have to move around to make that happen, but Gonna try and go down there for the open practice. I was hoping watching number 2 behind center on that one. So we'll see what it holds.
I look forward to hearing the report from Gator Day being back there. I want to understand whether Harrison Bailey or Aiden Warner is the backup, Dave. So let's.
That might be about all we can. We're not supposed to report on it at all, by the way.
Okay.
So I need to put that out there because I know people. Here's the thing, though. It's so weird to me. The media members can't report on it at all. It is also open to Florida Victorious members. Are they supposed to put their phones down?
So what you're telling me is that you should go to the Gators Breakdown Discord and become a member of Gators Breakdown Plus, and then you'll know what went on. Not because Gator Dave said anything, but because there's a lot of Florida Victorious members in that Discord who will be able to tell you exactly what went on.
Will Miles said it, not me, but I will endorse it. So, all right, good episode right here at Gators Breakdown. Fall camp underway. We'll follow it, and hopefully Lagway's out there pretty soon. Hopefully he's out there pretty soon. But good stuff. Will we'll get back. It's have to. I guess we'll make this a weekly occurrence now, all the way until February.
Hey, man, looking forward to it. We put a lot of time and effort into the magazine to get prepared for the season, and now it's time to go, man. It's time to go and getting excited. Only a month away.
For sure. Well, for Will Miles at Read and Reaction, I'm David Waters right here on Gators Breakdown. Guys and girls out there, thank you for listening and watching this episode of Gators Breakdown.